Terrifyingly, when a destitute girl, starving and freezing, stood in the stormy Las Vegas night with tears streaming down her face because her grandmother was dying, she was suddenly overheard in her entire desperate phone call in Spanish by the most powerful casino boss in the city. Can you imagine? In that single moment of hearing her broken voice, Ethan Callahan, the man who had never loved anyone, never softened for anyone, was struck by lightning straight to the heart. He was ready to offer an entire paradise of luxury in exchange for her. But is it truly salvation, or just the beginning of a nightmare she never saw coming? A bartender on the verge of being fired, living in a cockroach-infested apartment, her stomach empty for 3 straight days, suddenly finds herself flying on a private jet, staying in a cliffside villa, and discovering she's pregnant with the child of the coldest, most ruthless man in Las Vegas. The very man who unknowingly became the father from one masked, fateful night. Will this lightning strike love pull her up from the abyss of poverty, or drag her deeper into the hell of power, betrayal, and blood? Stay with me right now, because the story about to unfold will make you cry, hold your breath, and keep you on the edge until the very last second. Before we dive into this chilling and mysterious story, please remember to subscribe to the channel Alex Truths and like this video. Every subscription, like, and share from you is a huge spiritual gift and an incredibly profound source of motivation for the channel's growth, so we can continue bringing wonderful videos every day to everyone. There would be no greater joy than receiving your love and support through the comments you leave right below this video. Comments sharing your emotions or telling us which province or city you're living and working in while listening to this story. All right, let's continue together and immerse ourselves in this amazing, captivating story that's filled with deep emotions. It was a stormy October night in Las Vegas, the kind where the wind howled through the neon canyons of the Strip and rain lashed against the glittering facades like it wanted to wash away all the sins of the city. I, Mia Harper, 25 years old and feeling every ounce of exhaustion in my bones, hurried through the employee entrance of the Callahan casino, my thin jacket doing nothing against the chill that had seeped into my skin after too many sleepless nights in my rundown studio apartment off Fremont Street. My hands trembled as I tied on my black apron, the fabric worn thin from countless shifts. I was already late, again, because the bus had broken down in the downpour and I couldn't afford a rideshare. My stomach growled. Dinner had been a stale granola bar scavenged from the break room yesterday. At 5'6", I was down to barely 110 pounds, my cheeks hollow, my dark hair limp and unwashed for days. Poverty wasn't just a word for me. It was the constant ache in my empty fridge, the eviction notice taped to my door, the way creditors called at all hours about my grandmother's mounting hospice bills in San Diego. I was destitute, scraping by on tips that barely covered rent in a place where roaches shared my bed, and the heat flickered on and off like a bad joke. The floor manager, a harried man named Luis, grabbed my arm as I rushed toward the bar. "Mia, VIP poker room tonight. Private high-stakes game in the back. No mistakes." His eyes were wide with the usual fear that came when the boss was involved. I nodded numbly, my heart sinking. The VIP room meant longer hours, richer clients who tipped big if you were invisible and perfect, but one wrong move and you were out on the street. The Callahan Casino was a palace of excess, all crystal chandeliers, marble floors, and the endless chime of slot machines echoing like false promises. I pushed through the swinging doors into the private hallway, tray balanced with expensive crystal glasses and top-shelf whiskey. The storm raged outside, thunder rumbling like distant warnings, lightning flashing through the tinted windows and illuminating the opulent gaming tables. The high-stakes poker room was dimly lit, intimate, with green felt tables under golden lamps and walls lined with dark wood paneling. 6 men sat around the main table, suits that cost more than my yearly rent tailored to perfection, cigar smoke curling lazily in the air. Their conversation was low, serious, deals being made that had nothing to do with cards. But one man dominated the space without effort. Ethan Callahan, the owner, the undisputed king of this empire. Fair-skinned, with sharp features and dark hair perfectly styled, he couldn't have been more than 36, but his presence filled the room like gravity itself. His eyes, cold and calculating, missed nothing. I moved efficiently, serving drinks with my head down, invisible as always. My phone, an old, cracked model on its last legs, vibrated insistently in my apron pocket. I ignored it at first, personal calls weren't allowed, but it kept buzzing. Dread coiled in my gut. It was the hospice number from San Diego. My grandmother, my only family, the woman who had raised me after my parents died in a car crash when I was 10. She was all I had left, and she'd been fading fast. They were deep in their game, chips stacking high, voices murmuring about trucking routes and partnerships. I stepped back against the wall, heart pounding, and slipped into the shadowed corner near the service door. My voice came out a whisper, soft and timid, laced with the Spanish my grandmother had taught me, the language we always used for family matters. Hola, sí, soy Mia Harper. The nurse's voice was gentle but final. My grandmother's condition had worsened dramatically. Hours, maybe less. Come if you can. Tears blurred my vision instantly. I closed my eyes, the phone trembling against my ear, my free hand clutching my side as if to hold myself together. The words slipped out in broken Spanish, a soft sob escaping despite my efforts. I ended the call, numbness spreading through me like ice, dizziness making the room tilt. How could I get to San Diego? No money for a bus ticket, let alone a flight. My world, already crumbling, felt like it was shattering completely. When I opened my eyes, wiping away tears furiously, the room had gone deathly silent. Cards lay forgotten. Every pair of eyes was on me. But Ethan's gaze, it was different, sharper, more intense. His head tilted slightly, as if truly seeing me for the first time. He had heard the fluent Spanish, the grief raw in my voice. Something shifted in those dark eyes, a flicker of recognition perhaps, or something deeper, more dangerous. My cheeks burned with humiliation. A poor, broken bartender, crying in front of the most powerful man in Las Vegas. I stammered an apology, my voice small and polite. I'm so sorry for the interruption, gentlemen. But inside, turmoil raged. Fear that I'd lose my job, confusion at the way he stared, a spark of desperate curiosity about why his expression had softened, just for a moment, with what looked like pain. The game resumed slowly, but I felt his eyes on me every time I moved. The storm outside mirrored the one building in my chest, hopelessness, terror, and now this strange, disorienting pull toward the man whose world was galaxies away from my pitiful existence. The poker game dragged on long past midnight, the storm outside growing fiercer with every passing hour. Thunder rolled like artillery over the desert, and sheets of rain battered the high windows of the private room. I moved in and out on unsteady legs, refilling glasses, clearing empty bottles, trying to make myself small and unnoticed. But I felt Ethan Callahan's eyes on me every single time I entered. Dark, unreadable, burning with something I could not name. Each glance sent a shiver through my malnourished frame, a confusing mix of fear and something warmer, something that made my hollow stomach twist in ways hunger alone could not explain. When the last hand was finally played and the other men rose to leave, laughing quietly about fortunes won and lost, I began gathering the heavy crystal tumblers onto my tray. My arms shook from exhaustion and low blood sugar. I had not eaten a real meal in 3 days. The eviction notice in my pocket felt like a stone weighing me down. My grandmother's hospice bills were already weeks overdue, and now the nurse's words echoed endlessly. Hours, maybe less. I was balancing the tray, head bowed, when a deep, quiet voice stopped me cold. Mia. No one here ever used my first name. Not the managers, not the regulars, not even the other bartenders. I froze, nearly dropping the glasses. Slowly, I turned. Ethan Callahan stood alone by the felt table, jacket unbuttoned, sleeves rolled once to reveal strong forearms. The overhead lamp cast golden light across his fair skin and sharp features, making him look almost unreal, like something carved from wealth and power itself. His eyes, those piercing dark eyes, were fixed on me with an intensity that stole what little breath I had left. Come here. It was not loud, not harsh, but it carried absolute authority. My feet moved before my mind caught up, the tray forgotten on a side table. I stopped a few feet away, clutching my hands together to hide their trembling. Up close, the scent of his expensive cologne, something woody and warm, wrapped around me, so different from the cheap detergent and desperation that clung to my own clothes. Sit, he said, gesturing to one of the leather chairs the players had vacated. I hesitated, fear and confusion warring inside me. Employees did not sit in the presence of Ethan Callahan. But his gaze held no anger, only that strange, burning focus. I perched on the very edge of the chair, my worn shoes barely touching the plush carpet, feeling smaller and dirtier than ever in this palace of luxury. He did not sit. Instead, he stood looking down at me for a long, silent moment that stretched until my heart hammered against my ribs. Inside his chest, something violent was happening, something he had not felt in years. The sound of her soft, broken Spanish on the phone had struck him like a blade to an old wound. He had lost his own mother young, to illness his father's money could not outrun. And the grief in Mia's voice, the raw, hopeless love for a dying grandmother, had cracked open a place he had buried deep beneath layers of power and control. Guilt gnawed at him, guilt for the life he led, for the blood on his hands, for the way he had hardened himself against any softness. Seeing this thin, exhausted girl trying so desperately to hold herself together awakened a remorse so fierce it felt like fire in his veins. He wanted, needed to protect her. The feeling terrified him as much as it consumed him. "You speak Spanish fluently," he said at last, his voice low and steady. I nodded, barely trusting my voice. "Yes, sir, my grandmother, she taught me. We always spoke it together." He absorbed that, eyes never leaving my face. And the call tonight, it was about her. It was not a question. Heat flooded my cheeks with fresh humiliation. He had heard everything. "Yes, sir," I whispered, so softly I wasn't sure he caught it. She's in hospice in San Diego. The nurse said..." My throat closed. I could not finish. Ethan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Inside, a storm raged. How many people had he ruined without a second thought? How many families had he left broken for the sake of territory or profit? And now this fragile young woman, half-starved, drowning in debt because she was trying to give her grandmother a few more comfortable days. This was the injustice that finally pierced him. A violent conflict tore at his heart. The cold, calculating boss who never showed weakness, and the man who suddenly wanted, with an intensity that shocked him, to shield her from every cruelty the world had thrown at her. "I need someone who speaks native Spanish," he said, "for business on the West Coast. Meetings with trucking partners out of California and Arizona. 2 weeks, perhaps 3. You would translate, accompany me, handle some correspondence." My eyes widened. Confusion spun through me like dizziness. "Me? Sir, I'm just a bartender. There are professional translators." "I don't want a professional," he cut in, gentle but firm. "I want someone real, someone who understands the language the way family does. His gaze softened for a fraction of a second, and something fierce and tender flashed across his face. "And I want you." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning I could not fully grasp. My heart stuttered. No one had ever wanted me for anything except cheap labor. I was the girl who cleaned tables, who smiled through exhaustion, who disappeared when the shift ended. The idea that Ethan Callahan, this untouchable, terrifyingly powerful man, wanted me for any reason sent a rush of warmth through my frozen body, followed immediately by terror. What did he really want? What would this cost? He seemed to read my fear. "You would be paid generously," he continued, "enough to clear your debts, enough to cover your grandmother's care for years." He paused, letting that sink in. "And I will arrange immediate private transport to San Diego tomorrow morning. You will see her. You will have time with her. All expenses covered, medical, travel, everything." The room tilted. I gripped the arms of the chair to steady myself, numbness spreading through my limbs. It was too much, too perfect, too impossible. Tears welled again, hot and uncontrollable. "Why?" I whispered, voice cracking. "Why would you do this for me? You don't even know me." Ethan's expression shifted, something raw and painful crossing his features before he masked it. Inside, remorse clawed deeper. He knew exactly why. Because her pain echoed his own buried grief. Because her quiet courage in the face of crushing poverty shamed the man he had become. Because the moment he heard her voice break in Spanish, something possessive and protective had ignited in him, an overwhelming surge of feeling so intense it frightened him. Love at first sound, perhaps. Irrational, consuming, violent in its suddenness. He wanted to give her the world, and he hated himself for how desperately he wanted her to accept it from his tainted hands. "I have my reasons," he said quietly. "But know this, Mia. If you agree, you will be under my protection. No one will hurt you. No one will take anything from you again." Protection. The word wrapped around my aching heart like a promise I had never dared dream. But suspicion lingered. Men like him did not help girls like me without expecting something dark in return. Yet the thought of seeing my grandmother, of easing her final days, of escaping, even briefly, the grinding, humiliating poverty that had become my entire life, it was a lifeline thrown to a drowning woman. I looked up at him, tears sliding down my hollow cheeks. My voice came out small, timid, polite, the voice of someone who had learned long ago to speak softly to power. If I say yes, sir, when would we leave?" A faint, almost imperceptible softening touched his eyes. Relief and something deeper, something fiercely tender, flared in his chest. "A car will pick you up at 6 a.m. Pack light. Everything else you need will be provided." He reached into his jacket and withdrew a sleek black envelope, sliding it across the table toward me. My trembling fingers opened it. Inside was a thick stack of crisp $100 bills, more money than I had seen in years, and a printed itinerary for a private flight to San Diego, departing at 9. I stared at it, dizziness returning. The gap between us had never felt wider. His calm authority, his effortless wealth, and me, thin, exhausted, clothed in threadbare rags, clutching salvation bought by a man whose world could crush me without effort. "Thank you," I whispered, hardly able to believe the words were mine. I don't know how to." "You don't have to," he said, voice low. "Just be ready." He turned to leave, then paused at the door, looking back. For one endless second, our eyes locked. In that gaze, I saw turmoil, guilt, remorse, and something blazing and possessive that stole my breath. Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. I sat alone in the vast, opulent room, the envelope heavy in my lap, tears falling silently onto the money that might save my grandmother and might cost me everything else. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside my chest, a different tempest had begun. Terror at what I had just agreed to, confusion at the way he had looked at me, and beneath it all, the faintest, most dangerous spark, a longing I could not name for the protection of the most powerful man I had ever met. Sleep never came that night. I sat on the sagging mattress in my tiny studio apartment off Fremont Street, the envelope of cash clutched in my lap like something forbidden. Rain hammered the thin roof, leaking through in steady drips that landed in the plastic bucket I kept by the bed. The single bulb overhead flickered weakly, casting long shadows across peeling wallpaper and the stack of unpaid bills piled on a cardboard box that served as my table. My stomach ached with emptiness. I had not dared spend even one bill from Ethan's envelope on food. It felt wrong, tainted, like accepting it would seal some invisible bargain I could not yet see. I packed what little I owned into a worn duffel bag, 2 threadbare uniforms, 1 faded sweater, a pair of jeans with holes at the knees, and the small silver locket my grandmother had given me for my 16th birthday, the only thing of value I possessed. Everything else had been sold long ago to pay for her medicine. My reflection in the cracked mirror showed a ghost, hollow cheeks, dark circles under my eyes from countless nights of cold wind whistling through broken window seals, lips chapped from dehydration. I looked like someone who had already given up, yet somehow I was still breathing. At exactly 6 a.m, headlights cut through the downpour outside my window. A sleek black Escalade pulled up to the crumbling curb, its polished surface gleaming even in the gray dawn. My heart lurched. This was real. I was really leaving with Ethan Callahan. The driver, a broad-shouldered man in a dark suit, stepped out with an umbrella and opened the rear door without a word. I hesitated on the threshold of my apartment, taking one last look at the place that had been both prison and shelter. Roaches skittered in the corner. The eviction notice fluttered on the door. I pulled my thin jacket tighter and stepped into the rain. Inside the vehicle, warmth enveloped me like a dream. Heated leather seats, soft classical music playing low, the faint scent of luxury I could not name. The driver placed my duffel in the trunk as though it were fine luggage. I sat rigid, hands knotted in my lap, afraid to touch anything. The partition between us stayed up, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts. Why was he doing this? What did a man like Ethan Callahan truly want with someone like me? We arrived at a private terminal at Harry Reid International Airport, one I had never known existed. No lines, no security pat-downs, no weary travelers. Just a sleek gate and a waiting jet that looked like something from a movie. My legs went weak. I had flown exactly once in my life, on a cramped budget airline to attend my mother's funeral. This was another universe. The driver handed me off to a polished woman in a navy suit who introduced herself as Claire, Mr. Callahan's executive assistant. "He'll meet you on board," she said with a professional smile, leading me up the steps. The interior of the jet stole what little breath I had left. Cream leather seats wide enough to curl up in, polished wood accents, a long sofa along one wall, and a private area curtained off at the rear. Soft lighting glowed warmly. A flight attendant offered me a heated towel and a glass of orange juice. My hand shook as I accepted it, the crystal cool against my fingers. And then he was there. Ethan Callahan boarded last, shaking rain from his dark hair, suit impeccable despite the storm. He paused when he saw me, those intense eyes sweeping over my thin frame, my worn clothes, the duffel at my feet. Something fierce and pained flashed across his face, guilt, raw and gnawing. Inside his chest, a war raged. He had built an empire on ruthlessness, yet the sight of this fragile woman, half-starved and trembling in his world of excess, tore at him with violent remorse. How many people had he left broken without a thought? And now one quiet, grieving girl, had awakened a longing so powerful it terrified him. He wanted to wrap her in safety, in comfort, in everything he possessed. The feeling was immediate, consuming, almost violent in its intensity. A love that had ignited the moment he heard her voice break on that phone call. He hated how desperately he needed her to accept his protection, and hated more that he did not deserve to give it. "Mia," he said softly, taking the seat across from me as the jet began to taxi. "Did you sleep?" I shook my head, voice barely above a whisper. "No, sir, I couldn't." He nodded, as if he understood more than I had said. The jet lifted smoothly into the stormy sky, and Las Vegas fell away beneath us. For a long moment we sat in silence, the only sound the low hum of engines. I clutched the armrests, dizziness returning, not from fear of flying, but from the overwhelming unreality of it all. Ethan reached into a polished cabinet and withdrew a soft cashmere blanket, draping it gently over my shoulders. His fingers brushed my arm for the briefest second, sending a jolt through me. "You're cold," he murmured. Tears pricked my eyes at the simple kindness. No one had cared if I was cold in years. "Thank you," I whispered, pulling the blanket tighter. It smelled faintly of him, warm, expensive, safe. He watched me for another long moment, inner conflict plain in the tightness around his eyes. Then he spoke, voice low and deliberate. "There are things you should know before we land." My heart stuttered. Here it came, the price. "I've had you investigated," he said quietly. "Not to frighten you, to understand how to help." Shock numbed me. Investigated. Of course. Men like him did not act on impulse. You know about my debts," I said faintly. "The eviction, my grandmother's bills." He nodded. "I know about the abusive ex in Texas, Ryan Decker. I know you fled with nothing but a bus ticket and the clothes on your back. I know you've been sending every extra dollar to that hospice, even when it meant you went hungry." His voice roughened slightly. "I know you've been alone, Mia, and I know that ends now." Horror and humiliation crashed over me in waves. He knew everything, the police reports I had filed and then withdrawn out of fear, the nights I had slept in bus stations, the way I had sold my mother's wedding ring for grocery money. Tears spilled hot down my cheeks. I turned toward the window, ashamed for him to see me cry again. But his next words froze me. "I also know about your grandfather." I whipped around, dizziness making the cabin spin. "My grandfather?" "Thomas Harper, long-haul trucker out of Nevada in the 1980s. He worked routes for my father." Ethan's gaze was steady, but pain flickered deep within it. "He died shielding my father during an ambush by a rival crew, a debt my family never repaid." The world tilted violently. My grandfather, whom I had never met, who had died before I was born, had been part of this world, tied to the Callahan family? Confusion, fear, and a strange, aching curiosity flooded me. Ethan leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees. "When I saw your name on the employee records months ago, I was curious. When the background check confirmed the connection, I watched closer." His voice dropped. "But last night, hearing you on that phone, it stopped being about curiosity or old debts." Inside him, remorse and longing collided with brutal force. He had watched her suffer from afar, telling himself it was only professional interest. But the truth was darker, deeper. He had been drawn to her quiet strength, her refusal to break despite everything. And now, seeing her up close, thin, trembling, yet still so beautiful in her vulnerability, he was lost. Love, fierce and sudden, burned through every defense he had built. He wanted to erase every injustice she had endured, even as guilt screamed that his world would only bring her more pain. I stared at him, tears falling unchecked. "You've been watching me. For months?" He did not look away. Yes, and I regret every day I left you struggling. The confession hung between us, heavy and impossible. A man who could buy cities had watched me scrape plates for tips, sleep in cold apartments, cry over bills I could not pay, and done nothing until now. Anger flickered, but it drowned beneath overwhelming confusion and the first faint, terrifying warmth of being seen, truly seen. The flight attendant brought breakfast, fresh fruit, warm pastries, eggs prepared exactly how I secretly loved them, though I had never told anyone. Ethan watched me pick at it, eyes gentle but tormented. "Eat," he said quietly. "Please." I obeyed, the food tasting like ash and heaven at once. Every bite highlighted the chasm between us. His effortless command of luxury, my lifelong hunger. Below us, the storm clouds parted, revealing the California coast. We were descending toward San Diego, toward my grandmother, toward answers I was not sure I wanted. Ethan reached across the small table and covered my cold hand with his warm one. The contact sent fire through my veins. I did not pull away. "Whatever happens," he said, voice rough with emotion, "you are safe now. I swear it." In that moment, suspended 30,000 feet above the world, something shifted inside me too. Suspicion lingered, fear coiled tight, but beneath it all bloomed the first fragile tendril of trust, and the dizzying, terrifying awareness that Ethan Callahan was looking at me not as an employee, not as a debt, but as something infinitely precious. And for the first time in years, I was not alone. The jet touched down smoothly on a private airstrip just outside San Diego, the Pacific Ocean glittering under a weak October sun that had finally broken through the storm clouds. I stepped out onto the tarmac, legs unsteady from the flight and from everything that had happened in the last 12 hours. The warm California air wrapped around me, carrying the faint salt of the sea, such a contrast to the dry desert wind of Las Vegas that had whipped through my broken windows for so many cold nights. But even this gentle breeze felt foreign, almost unreal, against my thin frame. A gleaming black Mercedes waited beside the jet, door already open. Ethan emerged behind me, his presence a solid, commanding force that made the ground crew straighten instinctively. He placed a light hand at the small of my back, barely a touch, yet it sent warmth spreading through my chilled body. I flinched slightly, not from fear exactly, but from the shock of being touched with care. No one had done that in years. Inside the car, the luxury pressed in again. Butter-soft leather, climate perfectly tempered, bottled water chilled in a crystal holder. Ethan sat beside me this time, not across. His thigh brushed mine once as the vehicle pulled away, and he did not move it. I stared out the tinted window, heart pounding, trying to process the impossible. I was here, in California, because of him. We drove along the coast, the highway curving beside turquoise waves. Mansions perched on cliffs, yachts bobbed in marinas, wealth I had only seen in magazines. My own life flashed in cruel contrast, the freezing nights curled under a single threadbare blanket, eating plain rice for days because it was cheapest, skipping meals so I could send $20 more to the hospice. The humiliation of it all rose like bile. How I had stood in food bank lines, pretending I was picking up for a sick friend, too ashamed to admit it was for myself. Ethan spoke quietly to the driver, then turned to me. "We're going straight to the facility. I've arranged for you to have unlimited time with her today." Tears pricked instantly. "Thank you, sir," I whispered, voice small and timid, the way it always became around authority. He winced almost imperceptibly at the formality. "Ethan," he corrected gently, "please." I nodded, but the name felt too intimate on my tongue. Inside him, turmoil churned deeper. Every time she called him sir, it was a reminder of the chasm he had created, the power he wielded, the fear he inspired. Guilt gnawed relentlessly. He had the means to have lifted her out of misery months ago, yet he had waited, watching from afar like some cold strategist. Now, seeing her thin hands tremble around the water bottle, her eyes wide with wary gratitude, the remorse was a living thing, tearing at his chest. And beneath it, the love, fierce, sudden, all-consuming, burned hotter. He wanted to pull her into his arms, to promise the world, but he knew he did not deserve even her trust. We arrived at the hospice center, a modest building I recognized from the few visits I had managed on Greyhound buses. But today, everything was different. The director met us at the entrance herself, eyes widening when she saw Ethan. "Mr. Callahan, everything is prepared as you requested." I glanced at him, confusion deepening. Prepared? He simply nodded, guiding me inside with that same light touch. The hallways smelled of antiseptic and flowers, real flowers, not the wilted discount ones I had sometimes brought. We reached my grandmother's room, and my heart seized. It was transformed. Gone was the cramped, dim space with its flickering fluorescent light and sagging bed. Now, soft sunlight streamed through new sheer curtains onto a spacious private suite. Fresh lilies, her favorite, filled vases on every surface. A comfortable recliner sat beside a hospital bed, draped in clean, soft linens. Medical equipment hummed quietly, state-of-the-art monitors I did not recognize. And in the bed, propped gently against pillows, was Abuela, looking smaller than ever but peaceful, her breathing steady for the first time in months. A doctor in a white coat stood nearby, reviewing a chart. "Miss Harper," he said warmly, "we flew in a specialist from the Mayo Clinic this morning. Your grandmother's pain is fully managed now, and we've started a new treatment protocol. She's stable, more comfortable than she's been in a long while." I swayed on my feet, dizziness crashing over me. Ethan's hand steadied my elbow instantly. Tears blurred my vision as I stumbled to the bed, taking Abuela's frail hand in mine. "Abuela, it's Mia." Her eyes fluttered open, clearer than I had seen in years. A faint smile curved her lips. "Mija, you came." I nodded, unable to speak, sobs catching in my throat. All the nights I had lain awake in my freezing apartment, worrying I would never make it in time. All the skipped meals, the extra shifts, the humiliation of begging for advances on tips that never came. It had all led to this moment, bought by a man whose motives I still feared. Ethan stood back, giving us space, but I felt his gaze. Inside him, the sight of their reunion was both salvation and torment. He had done this, arranged specialists, private rooms, unlimited care, with a few phone calls and unlimited funds. Yet the gratitude in Mia's tear-filled eyes only deepened his remorse. How many others suffered while he built his empire? And how could he dare love her when his world was built on shadows? Abuela's gaze shifted past me to Ethan. "You brought her," she said weakly in Spanish. He stepped closer, voice gentle. "Yes, ma'am. And I'll make sure she never worries about you again." Abuela studied him for a long moment, sharp even in illness. Then she smiled faintly. "You have kind eyes for a powerful man." Ethan's jaw tightened. Kind. The word cut deep. I spent the afternoon at her bedside, holding her hand, telling her about the flight, careful to leave out the fear and confusion swirling inside me. She dozed peacefully, pain-free for the first time in months. Every so often I glanced at Ethan, who had taken the recliner across the room, working quietly on a tablet, but never looking away from us for long. His protectiveness was a tangible thing, wrapping around the room like warmth. As evening fell, a nurse brought dinner, real food, nutritious and beautifully presented. Abuela ate a little, more than she had in weeks. I picked at mine, still dazed. Later, when Abuela slept, Ethan led me to an adjacent private lounge he had reserved. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the ocean sunset. A tray waited. Grilled salmon, fresh vegetables, warm bread, food I had not tasted in years. "Eat," he said softly, sitting across from me. I obeyed, tears falling silently into the plate. The flavors were overwhelming after so long on canned soup and stale bread. Between bites, the unfairness of it all crashed over me anew. Why me? Why now? What would this cost? Ethan watched every tear, inner conflict raging. He wanted to pull her against him, to wipe away every trace of suffering, but guilt held him back. He, whose decisions had ruined lives, now playing savior. The love burning in his chest was almost painful in its intensity. Outside, in the parking lot, a black SUV pulled up abruptly. 3 men emerged, rival crew, Ethan recognized instantly. Victor Morales' men, probing, testing boundaries now that word had spread Ethan was in California. Ethan's security intercepted them before they reached the entrance. From the window, I saw the tense standoff. Words exchanged, postures aggressive, but no blows landed. Ethan's men stood firm, forcing the others back. My heart raced with fresh fear. This was his world, danger always circling. He noticed my wide eyes. "They won't come closer," he said calmly, but his hand clenched on the armrest. Inside, fury mixed with fierce protectiveness. No one would threaten her. Not now. Not ever. Night deepened. Abuela remained stable. Ethan arranged for me to stay in a nearby hotel suite. Alone, he emphasized, though his eyes said he wanted otherwise. As we left the facility, he paused at the car. "You'll see her again tomorrow," he promised. "As long as you need." I looked up at him, ocean wind tugging my hair, the weight of his care pressing against the remnants of my suspicion. "Why does it feel like a dream I'm afraid to wake from?" I whispered. His expression fractured for a moment. Raw longing, remorse, love all warring openly. "Because you deserve so much more than dreams, Mia." In that quiet moment under the stars, something inside me cracked open too. The poor, powerless girl who had endured endless unfair nights began, against all reason, to believe she might finally be safe. And the powerful man beside her felt his hardened heart tear wider, knowing he would burn the world to keep her that way. The next morning broke clear and golden over the Pacific, sunlight spilling across the private compound Ethan had brought me to after leaving the hospice the night before. The place was perched on a cliff near La Jolla, white stucco walls, terracotta tiles, infinity pool blending into the ocean below. Bougainvillea spilled in vivid pinks over arches, and the air carried the scent of salt and citrus. I stood on the wide terrace outside the guest suite he had given me, clutching a mug of fresh coffee a housekeeper had brought, staring at the view in stunned silence. Everything felt borrowed, like I had wandered into someone else's life by mistake. The suite itself was larger than any apartment I had ever lived in. King bed dressed in linen so fine it felt like silk against my skin. Marble bathroom with a soaking tub I had not dared use yet. Wardrobe already filled with clothes in my exact size. Simple but beautiful dresses, soft sweaters, jeans that fit perfectly. I had cried when I saw them, ashamed of the tears, ashamed of how desperately I wanted to keep them. Abuela had been resting comfortably when I left her the evening before, the new specialist assuring me she would have several more good days. Ethan had promised I could return any time. The relief was so profound it left me hollow, as though my body had forgotten how to carry anything but worry. Now he appeared on the terrace, dressed in a crisp white shirt open at the collar, dark trousers tailored to perfection. He moved with that effortless authority that made the world bend around him. In his hand he carried a small tray, fresh fruit, warm croissants, yogurt swirled with honey. "You didn't eat much last night," he said quietly, setting it on the glass table beside me. I flushed, remembering how I had picked at the salmon, too overwhelmed to swallow. I'm sorry. It was wonderful. You don't have to apologize for anything, Mia. His voice was low, almost rough. He pulled out a chair for me, the gesture old-fashioned and gentle. I sat, hands trembling again. He took the seat across, watching as I forced myself to take a bite of strawberry. The sweetness burst on my tongue, and tears threatened once more. Simple fruit had become a luxury in my life. Inside Ethan, the conflict raged fiercer than ever. Every small detail of her poverty, the way her collarbones stood out beneath the borrowed sweater, the faint shadows under her eyes from years of broken sleep, the instinctive hesitation before accepting food, cut him deeper. He had spent years insulating himself from guilt, telling himself the world was harsh and only the strong survived. But Mia's quiet endurance shamed him. She had survived on far less than he could imagine, and done it with grace. The love that had ignited so suddenly now burned with possessive intensity. He wanted to give her everything, to erase every cold night, every skipped meal, every moment of humiliation. Yet remorse gnawed relentlessly. His protection came from a world that could destroy her as easily as it saved her. "We have a meeting this afternoon in Los Angeles," he said, breaking the quiet. "Trucking partners from Tijuana and Nogales. They prefer Spanish for the real discussions. I need you there." I nodded, fear and curiosity mingling. "I'll do my best." He smiled faintly, the first real smile I had seen from him, and it transformed his sharp features, softening the edges. "You'll do more than that. I've seen how carefully you listen." The drive north took us along the coast in his vintage 1969 Mustang convertible, top down, wind whipping my hair. He drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the gear shift, close enough that our fingers almost touched. Classic rock played low on the radio, Springsteen, Tom Petty, songs that felt like America itself. I stole glances at him, marveling at how relaxed he seemed outside the casino's gilded cage. We stopped once at a roadside diner he claimed had the best burgers in California. I hesitated at the door. Places like this had always been too expensive for me. But he guided me inside with that same light touch at my back. He ordered for both of us without looking at the menu, and when the food arrived, he watched me eat with quiet satisfaction. I devoured it, hunger I had ignored for years roaring to life. He paid with cash from a money clip thick enough to choke on, leaving a tip larger than my hourly wage. The meeting was held in a sleek warehouse office overlooking the port of Los Angeles. 6 men waited, hard-eyed, tattooed, speaking rapid border Spanish. Ethan introduced me simply as Mia, my translator. They eyed me with casual dismissal until I began speaking, catching nuances they thought hidden, veiled threats about customs delays, hints of rival shipments. I translated faithfully, but added quiet clarifications for Ethan, phrases that meant more than they said. His eyes met mine across the table each time, approval and something hotter flickering there. By the end, terms were agreed that saved him millions. The men left with respectful nods, one even shaking my hand. Back in the car, Ethan exhaled slowly. "You just earned us a fortune." I shook my head, dizzy with the realization. I only said what they said. "You heard what they didn't say." He glanced at me, voice softening. "You're remarkable, Mia." Heat flooded my cheeks. No one had ever called me remarkable. Broken, maybe, pitiful, but never remarkable. That evening, he took me to a quiet cliffside restaurant in Malibu. Candlelight, linen tablecloths, the ocean crashing below. He ordered for us again, lobster, fresh salads, wine I did not touch because my head was already spinning. Between courses, he asked about my childhood, my grandmother's stories, the dreams I had buried under survival. I spoke haltingly at first, then more freely, surprised at how easy it felt. He listened as though every word mattered. When I mentioned selling my mother's locket to pay a bill, His hand tightened around his glass, knuckles whitening. Inside, rage and remorse collided. He imagined her alone, cold, sacrificing pieces of her past while he sat in penthouses counting profits. The love surged, violent and tender. He wanted to hunt down every injustice that had touched her. Later, driving back under a canopy of stars, he pulled the Mustang onto a deserted overlook. The engine idled softly. For a long moment, we sat in silence, waves far below the only sound. "Mia," he said at last, voice rough. He turned to me, eyes dark and intense. "I need you to know this isn't just about translation, or old debts." My heart hammered. Then, what is it about? He reached across the console, fingers brushing my cheek with heartbreaking gentleness. "It's about you. From the first moment I heard your voice break on that call, I haven't been able to think of anything else." The confession hung between us, raw and impossible. I stared at him, dizziness returning. A man who commanded empires was telling me, poor, thin, broken me, that I consumed his thoughts. His thumb traced my jaw. "I know you're afraid. You should be. My world isn't safe. But I swear on everything I am, I will keep you safe inside it." Tears welled again. The unfairness of my life, the years of cold nights, empty cupboards, the slow erosion of hope crashed against this sudden, overwhelming care. I leaned into his touch without thinking, drawn by a pull stronger than fear. He closed the distance slowly, giving me every chance to pull away. When his lips met mine, the kiss was gentle at first, testing, reverent. Then something ignited. His hand cupped the back of my head, the kiss deepening with a hunger that stole my breath. I responded instinctively, months of loneliness, years of touch starvation pouring out. It was fire and safety at once, passion wrapped in protection. When we broke apart, foreheads resting together, both breathing hard, he whispered against my lips, "I'm already lost, Mia." Inside him, joy and terror collided. He had vowed never to let anyone close again. Love was leverage, weakness. Yet here he was, falling with violent intensity for the one woman whose pain mirrored every regret he carried. I pulled back slightly, trembling. "I'm scared," I admitted, voice small. "I know." He brushed a tear from my cheek. "But you don't have to be alone anymore." Far below, headlights appeared on the coastal road, another black SUV, moving too purposefully. Ethan's security tailed discreetly, but he tensed. Victor Morales' men again, probing closer. He started the engine. "We should go." As we drove into the night, his hand found mine across the console, fingers interlaced. I held on tightly, the poor girl who had endured endless unfairness, now clutching the hand of the most powerful man I knew. Suspicion lingered, fear coiled deep, but the warmth spreading through my chest was undeniable. A dangerous, growing hope that perhaps, against all reason, I was finally seen, finally wanted, finally safe. The days that followed blurred into a dream I kept waiting to wake from. Mornings visiting Abuela, who grew stronger with each new treatment Ethan quietly funded. Afternoons and evenings at his side. More meetings, more late-night drives along the coast, more moments where his hand found mine, or his eyes lingered until my breath caught. The kisses grew bolder, deeper, each one pulling me further from the cold, empty life I had known. Yet suspicion still whispered in quiet moments. This could not last. Men like Ethan Callahan did not keep girls like me. One evening, he invited me to a private gala in Los Angeles, a charity event for children's hospitals, held in a hillside mansion overlooking the city lights. I stood before the full-length mirror in my suite, hardly recognizing the woman staring back. The gown he had chosen was midnight blue silk, simple but elegant, hugging curves I had forgotten I possessed now that regular meals were filling them out. My hair fell in soft waves, makeup subtle but transforming. For the first time in years, I did not look like someone teetering on the edge of survival. Ethan appeared in the doorway, tuxedo impeccable, fair skin glowing against the black fabric. His eyes darkened as they traveled over me, something fierce and possessive flaring. "You're beautiful," he said, voice rough. He fastened a diamond necklace around my throat, cool stones against my warming skin, and his fingers lingered at my nape. The gala was a whirlwind of crystal chandeliers, string quartets, and people whose names appeared in magazines. Ethan kept me close, hand at the small of my back, introducing me as Mia Harper, my partner in important negotiations. The word partner sent heat through me, though doubt flickered. Partner in business or something more? Across the room, I noticed a man watching us. Tall, slick hair, cold smile. Victor Morales, the rival whose men had shadowed us before. His gaze lingered on Ethan's possessive hold, then shifted to me with calculating interest. A chill ran down my spine. Later, on a terrace overlooking the glittering city, Ethan pulled me into the shadows. "You okay?" he murmured, thumb brushing my cheek. I nodded, though anxiety coiled tight. "That man, he's the one from the parking lot, isn't he?" Ethan's jaw hardened. "Morales, he's testing boundaries, but he won't touch you." The promise was steel, yet fear lingered. His world was closing in. We returned to the San Diego compound late, the Mustang's engine purring through quiet streets. Inside the cliffside house, lights low, he led me to the living room with its sweeping ocean view. A fire crackled in the stone hearth, something I had only seen in movies. He poured 2 glasses of water, handing me one, then sat close on the leather sofa. The kiss started slow, his hand cupping my face with reverence. But emotion had been building for days, and it ignited. His arms pulled me against him, the kiss turning hungry, desperate. I melted into it, months of loneliness pouring out, hands tangling in his hair. When we broke apart, breathing ragged, he rested his forehead against mine. "Mia," he whispered, voice raw, "I need to tell you something." My heart stuttered. Here it came, the price, the truth that would shatter this dream. He took my hands, eyes tormented. "That night, months ago, the masquerade party at the casino, private event, you were there." Confusion spun through me. I had crashed a staff party after a brutal shift, heartbroken from learning my ex had emptied my meager savings account. Drunk on cheap wine, I had wandered into a masked gathering upstairs, lonely and reckless. "There was a man," I said slowly, cheeks burning, "masked. We spent the night together. It was only once. I left before dawn. I never knew who." Ethan's grip tightened, eyes closing as if in pain. It was me. The world tilted violently. Dizziness crashed over me. I gripped his hands to stay upright. "You?" He nodded, remorse and longing warring openly. "I didn't know it was you then, not your name, not your face clearly. But I never forgot that night, the way you felt, the way you looked at me like I was just a man, not—" He swallowed. "When I heard your voice on the phone weeks ago, something felt familiar, but I didn't connect it until now." Horror and shock numbed me. That anonymous, passionate night, the one reckless thing I had done after fleeing Texas, had been with Ethan Callahan. "There's more," he said, voice breaking. "You're 8 weeks pregnant, aren't you?" I froze. I had only just realized it myself, confirmed by a drugstore test bought with trembling hands. The father could only be from that night. I had planned to raise the child alone, as I had everything else, another unfair burden on a life already crushed by poverty. "How did you—" "You've been careful with wine, the way you hold your stomach sometimes when you think no one notices." His hand moved gently to rest over my still flat belly, eyes fierce with emotion. "Mia, the baby is mine." The revelation struck like lightning. Tears spilled hot down my cheeks. All the lonely nights planning how to survive pregnancy on a bartender's wage. The terror of raising a child in a roach-infested studio with an eviction looming. Gone in an instant. Yet confusion and fear surged higher. This child tied me irrevocably to a dangerous man. Ethan pulled me against him as sobs shook me. "I'm sorry," he whispered into my hair, "for not knowing, for leaving you to struggle all this time. But I swear, Mia, our child will never know hunger, will never know fear, and neither will you." Inside him, emotions tore with violent force. Joy at the thought of a family, something he had buried after losing his mother, collided with crushing remorse. He had unknowingly left the woman carrying his child to suffer alone, scraping by while he lived in luxury. The love already burning for her now blazed hotter, possessive and protective beyond reason. He would raise empires to keep them safe. I clung to him, the poor girl who had endured endless cold nights, now cradled in arms that commanded worlds. Shock numbed me, but beneath it warmth spread. This man, this powerful, tormented man, was the father of my baby, and he wanted us. Outside, headlights swept the drive. Ethan tensed, moving instinctively to shield me. His security team intercepted another vehicle. Morales' men again, bolder now, stopping at the gates with engines idling. Words were exchanged through windows, postures threatening but controlled. Ethan watched from the window, arm around me, jaw tight. "They know," he said quietly. "About us. About the baby, maybe. They're looking for weakness." Fear spiked cold through me. What do they want? To take what's mine. His voice hardened, but his hold on me gentled. "But they won't. Not you. Not our child." In that moment, with danger circling and revelation still ringing, I turned into him fully. The suspicion that had guarded my heart cracked wide. His love, sudden, overwhelming, fierce, was real. And for the first time, the destitute girl who had known only unfairness felt something new. The fierce, burning beginning of love in return. The night deepened around us, ocean waves crashing below like distant thunder, while inside the fire burned warm, and two hearts, his tormented by guilt and joy, mine shattered and remade, beat closer than ever before. The morning after the revelation dawned soft and golden, sunlight spilling across the wide bed where I had slept alone. Ethan insisting on giving me space to process the impossible truth that he was the father of my child. I woke with a hand instinctively over my belly, tears already wetting the pillow. The night before replayed in fragments, his confession, the fierce tenderness in his eyes, the way he had held me as shock and joy warred inside us both. For the first time, the future did not look like endless struggle. Yet fear coiled deeper. This child tied me forever to a world I barely understood. I found him in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, making breakfast himself. Eggs, bacon, fresh biscuits. The domestic sight jarred against everything I knew of him. He turned when I entered, expression softening, then tightening with concern at my red eyes. "Come here," he said quietly. I crossed the marble floor, and he pulled me gently into his arms. I rested my cheek against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, strong, steady, a rhythm I was beginning to crave. His hand settled protectively over my stomach. "Our baby," he whispered, voice thick. "I still can't believe it." Inside him, emotions tore with renewed violence. Joy at this unexpected family battled crushing remorse. He had left her pregnant and alone, scraping by in poverty while he lived in mansions. The love that had ignited weeks ago now roared like wildfire, possessive and absolute. He would rewrite every injustice she had suffered, even if it meant burning parts of his empire to the ground. We ate on the terrace, ocean breeze gentle. He spoke of plans, doctors in Los Angeles, a nursery wherever I chose, college funds already started. Each promise highlighted the chasm, his effortless wealth against my years of counting pennies for rice, selling clothes for bus fare, enduring freezing nights because the landlord shut off heat for non-payment. Tears fell silently into my plate again. He reached across, thumb brushing them away. No more tears for the past, Mia, only forward. But the past was not done with us. Mid-morning, his phone buzzed repeatedly. His expression darkened as he read messages. "Stay inside today," he said, kissing my forehead. "I have to handle something." Fear spiked. "Is it Morales?" He hesitated. "Possibly. Nothing you need to worry about." But worry consumed me. I spent the day with Abuela, who was sitting up, color in her cheeks for the first time in months. She held my hand, eyes sharp. "This man, he cares for you deeply, mija." I nodded, throat tight. "He says the baby is his." Her eyes widened, then softened. "Then you are not alone anymore." Yet as evening fell, alone in the compound, anxiety gnawed. I paced the terrace, wind whipping my hair, memories of cold nights in Las Vegas flooding back. The humiliation of food stamps, the terror of eviction notices, the slow erosion of hope. Headlights appeared on the coastal road, 2 SUVs, moving fast. Ethan's security gates held, but the vehicle stopped, men emerging. Shouts carried on the wind. My heart raced. I pressed against the glass doors, watching. Ethan arrived minutes later in the Mustang, tires screeching. He stepped out, posture commanding, and approached the gate alone. Words were exchanged, sharp, tense. One man gestured aggressively toward the house, toward me. Ethan's response was quiet, but carried authority that made the others step back. No blows, but the threat hung heavy. Finally, the SUVs reversed and left. He entered the house minutes later, face granite. I met him in the foyer, trembling. "They're getting bolder," he said, pulling me close. "Morales is pushing." "Because of me?" I whispered. "Because of the baby?" He didn't answer immediately, and that silence terrified me more. We sat by the fire again, his arm around me. After a long stillness, he spoke. "There's something else, something I should have told you sooner." My stomach dropped. Another revelation. His security chief, Claire, entered with a tablet, face grim. She handed it to Ethan. He scrolled, jaw tightening with each swipe. "Your ex," he said finally. "Ryan Decker." The name struck like ice. Ryan, the man I had fled Texas to escape, the one whose control had turned violent, whose threats had followed me across states. What about him? Ethan turned the tablet toward me. Photos, reports, communications intercepted. Ryan in a federal jacket, meetings with known informants, bank records showing payments tied to investigations. He's a special agent, FBI. He's been building a case on me for years. RICO, trafficking through the trucking routes. Shock numbed me. The room spun. I gripped the sofa to stay upright. He used me, I whispered, voice breaking. All those months, the control, the fear. He was using me to get close to your world. Ethan's arm tightened. When you left him, he lost his inside track, but he never stopped. Now he knows you're here, with me, carrying my child. Horror crashed over me in waves. All the unfairness, the beatings I had hidden, the nights I had gone hungry to escape him, the slow rebuilding of a shattered life, had been manipulation. He had never loved me. I had been bait. Tears choked me. He'll come for me, to hurt you. Ethan's eyes blazed. He'll try, but he won't succeed. Inside him, rage and remorse collided with explosive force. Ryan Decker had terrorized the woman he loved, left her pregnant and destitute while pursuing his case. The guilt was unbearable. Ethan's empire had drawn this predator into her life. Yet the love burned hotter, a fierce vow forming. He would end this threat, whatever the cost. Outside, another confrontation brewed. Ryan himself appeared at the gates hours later, alone, badge visible, demanding to check on Mia's welfare. Ethan met him on the drive, security flanking but holding back. I watched from the window, heart pounding. Words flew, Ryan accusing coercion, Ethan countering with quiet menace. Ryan's gaze found me through the glass, eyes cold with possession. "You're not safe with him, Mia." Ethan stepped forward, blocking the view. "She's under my protection. Leave. Now." Ryan backed away, but his parting words carried, "This isn't over." Ethan returned inside, pulling me into his arms as I shook with sobs. "He used me," I whispered over and over. "Everything was a lie." "Not everything," Ethan said fiercely. "What's between us is real. The baby is real. I will fix this." He held me through the night, my head on his chest, his hand over our child. The poor girl who had endured years of deception and poverty now lay in the arms of a man whose love felt like salvation and whose world threatened to consume us both. As dawn broke, Ethan's phone rang with updates. Ryan's case accelerating, warrants pending. Danger closed in, but so did Ethan's resolve. In the quiet before the storm, he kissed my forehead. "No one takes you from me, not ever." And in that moment, amid betrayal's cruel sting, my heart, torn between past horrors and this overwhelming love, chose him completely. The destitute woman who had known only unfairness finally surrendered to the fierce protection of the man who would burn worlds to keep her and their child safe. The days after the betrayal revelation passed in a haze of heightened security and quiet intensity. Ethan never left my side for long. Armed guards patrolled the compound grounds, their presence a constant reminder that Ryan Decker and Victor Morales were closing in. Abuela remained stable, blissfully unaware of the storm gathering outside her peaceful suite. But inside the cliffside house, the air crackled with unspoken fear and something deeper, something that pulled at us both like gravity. Ethan became openly possessive. He watched me constantly, eyes dark with a mixture of fierce protection and raw hunger. When I moved through the rooms, his gaze followed, as though afraid I might vanish. At night, he insisted I sleep in the master suite with him, not demanding anything physical, but simply holding me close, his hand always resting over our child. I lay awake listening to his heartbeat, the poor girl who had spent years alone in freezing apartments, now wrapped in arms that commanded empires. The contrast tore at me, his effortless power against my lifelong powerlessness. One afternoon, after another tense standoff at the gates, Morales' men again, idling with engines running, shouting challenges Ethan met with calm authority. I found him in his study, staring out at the ocean. His shoulders were tight, jaw clenched. I approached hesitantly. "Ethan?" He turned, and the storm in his eyes stole my breath. In 2 strides, he closed the distance, cupping my face with both hands. "I can't lose you," he said, voice rough. "Either of you." Then he kissed me. What began as desperation quickly ignited. His mouth claimed mine with a hunger that had been building for weeks, fierce, consuming, almost punishing in its intensity. I responded without thought, hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. Years of loneliness, of cold nights and empty arms poured out. He lifted me effortlessly onto the desk, papers scattering, his body pressing between my legs as the kiss deepened. Hands roamed, his tracing the new softness of my curves, mine exploring the hard lines of muscle beneath his shirt. Breath mingled, ragged and hot. The world narrowed to heat and need, and the overwhelming reality that this man, this powerful, dangerous man, wanted me with a passion that matched my own buried longing. When we finally broke apart, foreheads pressed together, both shaking, he whispered against my lips, "I'm obsessed with you, Mia. I've been obsessed since that first night. And now, knowing you carry my child, it's tearing me apart." Inside him, the conflict raged like never before. Love, violent, all-consuming love, collided with torment. He had built walls after his mother's death, vowing never to let anyone close enough to be used against him. Yet here he was, utterly lost to this fragile woman who had endured more hardship than he could bear to imagine. Remorse clawed deeper. Every skipped meal she had suffered, every cold night, every tear shed alone, he felt responsible, as though his world's shadows had touched her long before they met. He wanted to worship her, protect her, possess her completely. The intensity terrified him as much as it thrilled him. I traced his jaw with trembling fingers. "I'm scared," I admitted softly, "but I've never felt so wanted." His eyes closed at my words, pain flashing. "You deserve to feel wanted every day of your life, not just now." That night, passion overtook restraint. In the master bedroom, moonlight spilling across the vast bed, he undressed me slowly, reverently, kissing every inch of skin revealed as though memorizing it. When I stood bare before him, still too thin, ribs faintly visible, belly just beginning to curve, he dropped to his knees, pressing his lips to the small swell. "Our baby," he murmured, voice breaking. Tears glistened in his eyes as he looked up at me. "I'll spend the rest of my life making up for the time I wasn't there." I pulled him up, kissing him through my own tears. Clothes fell away, skin met skin. The lovemaking was explosive, tender and fierce at once, years of my deprivation meeting his years of self-denial. He moved with worshipful intensity, whispering my name like a prayer, hands gentle even in passion. I clung to him, lost in sensation I had forgotten existed. The poor girl who had known only survival, now drowning in pleasure and love. Afterward, tangled in sheets, his arms locked around me, he spoke into my hair. "I love you, Mia, more than I thought possible. It's consuming me." The confession tore the last of my walls down. Tears fell silently. "I love you too," I whispered, "even though it scares me, even though I don't understand why you chose me." He held me tighter. "Because you're everything good I'm not, because your strength shames me, because from the moment I heard your voice break, I was yours." But danger shadowed even this bliss. The next day brought another confrontation. Ryan Decker appeared again, this time with marked federal vehicles, lights flashing silently at the gates. He demanded to speak with me, for my safety. Ethan met him on the drive, security flanking. I watched from the terrace, heart pounding. Ryan's voice carried. "She's not safe with you, Callahan. Step aside." Ethan's reply was ice. "She's exactly where she wants to be, with the father of her child." Ryan's face twisted. He looked up at me. "Mia, he's using you." The lie, the years of his own manipulation, sent fresh pain lancing through me. I gripped the railing, dizziness returning. Ethan turned, shielding me from view. "Leave, or the next conversation won't be this civil." Ryan retreated, but his parting glare promised more. That evening, Morales struck indirectly. A delivery truck, one of Ethan's legitimate routes, was stopped on the highway. Random inspection turning up planted evidence. News alerts buzzed on Ethan's phone. Warrants were coming. He paced the living room, rage and fear warring. "They're coordinating. Decker feeding Morales intel to force my hand." I approached, hand on his arm. "What does that mean for us?" He stopped, pulling me close. "It means we protect what's ours, whatever it takes." His obsession deepened. He arranged private doctors, extra security, contingency plans. Gifts appeared, maternity clothes and soft fabrics, books on pregnancy, a cradle handcrafted from rare wood. Each one highlighted the gulf, his ability to snap fingers and make dreams reality, against my past of choosing between medicine and food. At night, passion became our refuge. explosive, raw, a way to affirm life amid gathering threats. He worshipped my body as it changed, hands gentle on the growing curve, lips tracing stretch marks that hadn't yet appeared, as though preemptively loving every part of me. One night, after another tense gate standoff, this time Morales himself shouting challenges Ethan answered with quiet menace, we lay spent and tangled. "I can't lose you," he said again, voice breaking. The thought tears me apart. I trace the worry lines on his forehead. You won't. I'm here. We're here. But inside both of us, turmoil raged. My love for him, sudden, overwhelming, fierce, warred with terror for our child's future. His love, obsessive, protective, redemptive, battled guilt and fear of the darkness he might bring us. In the quiet after passion, with ocean waves crashing below and danger circling above, we clung to each other. The destitute woman who had known only cold nights and unfairness now burned in the arms of a man whose love was as explosive as it was absolute. And in that fire, we found strength for whatever came next. The storm that had been gathering finally broke on a dark October night in 2025. I had fallen asleep in Ethan's arms after another evening of explosive closeness, our bodies tangled, hearts racing, the world outside forgotten in the fire we created together. His hand had rested protectively over my belly, fingers tracing gentle circles as he whispered promises to our unborn child. For a few precious hours, the threats felt distant, but they were not. I woke to the sound of shattering glass and shouts echoing through the compound. My heart slammed against my ribs. Ethan was already out of bed, pulling on clothes with lethal calm, gun in hand from the nightstand drawer. "Stay here," he ordered, voice steel. "Lock the door behind me." Terror flooded me. "Ethan!" He cupped my face, kissing me hard and brief. "I'll come back. I always come back to you." Then he was gone. I huddled on the bed, pulling the covers around me, dizziness and nausea rising, not just from pregnancy, but from raw fear. Flashes of my old life assaulted me, cold nights alone, praying no one would break into my rundown apartment, the humiliation of hiding bruises from Ryan's control, the endless, unfair grind that had left me thin and broken. Now, the man I loved was walking into danger because of me, because of our baby. Gunfire cracked outside, sharp, controlled bursts. Not wild, but enough to make me curl into a ball, tears streaming. Shouts followed. Ethan's men repelling intruders. I crept to the window, peering through curtains. In the floodlit drive, chaos unfolded. Black-clad figures, Morales' crew, coordinated with Ryan's federal team, had breached the outer gate. Ethan stood at the center, unarmed now, but commanding, his men forming a line. Ryan was there, badge gleaming, shouting orders for protective custody. Ethan's voice carried, deadly calm. "She's not going anywhere with you." Ryan stepped forward, smug. "You're done, Callahan. Warrants are signed. Surrender her or we take the house." Ethan didn't flinch. "Over my body." The standoff stretched, tension thick as fog. Morales' men shifted, itching for escalation. One lunged, Ethan's security intercepted, subduing without lethal force. Another tried the side entrance. Alarms blared. My breath came in sobs. This was my fault, my past with Ryan drawing this violence to the man who had saved me. Then the worst. A side door exploded inward downstairs. Footsteps pounded. I backed against the wall, heart thundering, vision blurring with panic. The bedroom door rattled. "Mia!" Ryan's voice, twisted with false concern. I froze, terror numbing me. Ethan's roar echoed from below. "Touch her and you die!" Pounding footsteps, Ethan racing upstairs. The door burst open. Ryan stood there, gun drawn, eyes wild. "You're coming with me, for your safety." I shook my head, voice small and trembling. "No, I'm staying with Ethan." His face contorted. "He's poisoned you. You're carrying my—" "He's the father," I cut in, hand over my belly. "And I love him." Ryan lunged. I screamed. Ethan appeared like thunder, tackling Ryan from behind. They crashed to the floor, struggling. Ethan's strength prevailed. He disarmed Ryan, pinning him with ruthless efficiency. Security swarmed in, cuffing the intruders. Ryan spat threats even as he was dragged away. "This isn't over. You'll fall, Callahan." Ethan rose, breathing hard, eyes finding mine. He crossed the room in 2 strides, pulling me into his arms. I clung to him, sobbing uncontrollably. "It's over," he murmured, hand stroking my hair. "He's finished." Outside, federal vehicles retreated under pressure. Ryan's corruption exposed in real time by Ethan's intercepted evidence. Morales' men scattered, their alliance crumbling. We stood in the shattered quiet afterward, glass crunching underfoot, his arms the only solid thing. Blood streaked his shirt, not his, but the sight tore at me. "You're hurt," I whispered. "Scratches," he lifted my chin. "Are you?" I shook my head, but inside I was breaking. The violence, the unfairness of my past dragging danger to this new life, overwhelmed me. Tears fell hot. He carried me downstairs, away from the damage, to a guest room untouched. There, in the dim light, he held me as shock gave way to sobs. "I almost lost you," he said, voice cracking for the first time. The thought, it rips me apart. Inside him, torment peaked. He had nearly failed. The woman carrying his child, the love that had redeemed his darkened soul, almost taken because of enemies he had made. Remorse and love collided violently. He would dismantle everything threatening them, no matter the cost. I pulled back, cupping his face. "You didn't lose me. You saved me. Again." Our kiss was desperate, born of survival. Clothes fell away in frantic need. Passion exploded, raw, intense, a reaffirmation of life. He moved with worshipful urgency, hands gentle on my belly, lips murmuring love against my skin. I arched into him, tears mixing with gasps. The poor girl who had known only loss, now claiming joy with fierce abandon. Afterward, tangled and spent, he held me close. "They're done," he said quietly. "Ryan's exposed, corruption charges incoming. Morales is retreating. We're safe." I traced the new bruise on his jaw. "Because of you." "Because of us," he corrected. "You give me something worth fighting for." In the quiet aftermath, with dawn creeping over the ocean and the compound securing once more, we lay in condensed stillness. My heart, torn by past misery and present fear, finally settled into the burning certainty of his love. His heart, tormented by guilt and nearly losing us, found peace in my arms. The violence had come and gone. What remained was us, stronger, bound by fire and unbreakable devotion. The destitute woman and the powerful man, together against whatever came next. The weeks after the raid passed in fragile calm. Ryan Decker was suspended pending investigation, his corruption laid bare by evidence Ethan's team had gathered. Victor Morales went quiet, his alliance with Ryan shattered. The compound was repaired, glass replaced, security tightened. On the surface, we were safe. But inside me, something fractured. I watched Ethan move through the days with ruthless efficiency. Phone calls dismantling threats, meetings shifting assets to legitimate ventures, all to protect us. He was tender with me, passionate at night, his love a constant flame. Yet every time I closed my eyes, I saw the gunfire, heard Ryan's voice, felt the terror of almost losing everything. The baby kicked for the first time one quiet afternoon. I sat on the terrace, hand over my belly, tears falling. This child, our miracle, deserved a world without shadows. Not one where federal raids and rival crews circled like wolves. The unfairness of my past had followed me, the cold nights, the hunger, the abuse, all leading to this danger. I could not let my baby pay for it. That night, after Ethan fell asleep, exhausted from another day of shielding us, I lay awake beside him. His arm draped heavily over me, possessive even in sleep. I studied his face. The sharp lines softened, the worry etched even in rest. I loved him with an intensity that scared me, passionate, burning, all-consuming. He had pulled me from poverty's pit, given me safety, love, a future. Yet the cost was this life of constant threat. Tears choked me. I could not stay and risk our child growing up looking over their shoulder. I could not drag Ethan deeper into violence because of me. In the quiet hours before dawn, I made the heart-wrenching choice. I slipped from bed, dressing in the dark. I wrote a letter on stationery from the desk, hands shaking, tears blurring the words. Ethan, you gave me everything when I had nothing. You loved me when I thought I was unlovable. You saved me over and over. But I see what loving me costs you. The danger, the violence, the parts of yourself you have to bury to keep us safe. Our baby deserves peace, a world without gates and guards and guns. I can't be the reason you lose yourself. I love you more than I can ever say. That's why I have to go, for now. Please don't follow. Let me keep our child safe until the storm passes. I'll come back when it's right. Forever yours, Mia. I left the letter on his pillow, kissed his forehead one last time, and walked away. The housekeeper, loyal but kind, drove me at my quiet request to a small town in Idaho, a place I had found on a map, far from everything. Ethan's people would look, but I asked her to tell no one the direction. She cried as she left me at a modest motel with cash I had saved from small allowances he gave me. The room was clean but basic, nothing like the compound's luxury. I sat on the narrow bed, hand over my belly, sobs tearing from my chest. The separation felt like dying. Every mile had ripped at my heart. I missed his touch, his voice, the safety of his arms. The love, fierce and explosive, burned undimmed, making the loneliness unbearable. Days turned to weeks. 3 agonizing weeks. I rented a tiny cabin on the edge of town with cash, living simply. Canned soup, walks in pine-scented air, visits to a local clinic for the baby. The poverty I had known crept back in small ways, counting coins for groceries, wearing the same sweater against autumn chill. But it was voluntary now, a sacrifice for peace. Ethan's letters began arriving, delivered discreetly by means I could not trace. The first, handwritten, pages long. Mia, I woke to an empty bed and a letter that broke me. You think you're protecting our child by leaving, but you're tearing out my heart. I understand the fear. I live with it every day, the guilt that my world touches you. But without you, there is no world worth having. Come home. Let me make it safe. I'm already moving pieces, legitimate businesses, distance from the old life. I love you. I love our baby. I'm lost without you. Ethan. Each letter came daily, raw, vulnerable, pleading. He wrote of changes, selling risky routes, expanding clean resorts, therapy for his own buried pain. He never demanded, only begged with quiet desperation. Inside him, torment reached new depths. The woman carrying his child, his redemption, his everything, gone by choice. Guilt consumed him. He had failed to make her feel safe enough to stay. Love turned agonizing, a constant ache. He searched without forcing, respecting her space while dying inside. Nights were sleepless, days mechanical. He wrote letters like lifelines, pouring out remorse, love, promises. I read them by firelight in the cabin, sobbing. The separation was heart-wrenching. Every kick from the baby a reminder of what he missed. Every cold wind through the pines echoing the nights I had endured alone before him. I loved him violently, obsessively. The quiet town was peaceful, but empty without his presence. One night, snow began to fall, the first of the season. I sat by the window, letter in hand, belly rounded now. The unfairness of it all crashed over me, fleeing the man who loved me most to protect our child from dangers born of my past. Tears fell hot. I could not bear another day apart. The next morning, I packed my small bag and called the number he had left in every letter, a direct line. He answered on the first ring, voice hoarse. "Mia?" "It's me," I whispered, crying already. "I'm ready to come home." Silence, then a broken exhale. "I'm coming for you, now." Hours later, his Mustang pulled up outside the cabin, snow swirling. He stepped out, face gaunt from weeks of torment, eyes red-rimmed. I ran to him through the cold, throwing myself into his arms. He caught me, lifting me off the ground, burying his face in my hair. Sobs shook us both. "I'm sorry," I whispered over and over. "Never again," he said fiercely. "We face everything together." The drive back was quiet, hands clasped, snow falling softly. His love, tried by separation, burned brighter. My love, tested by fear, felt unbreakable. In the heart-wrenching choice to leave and the agonizing wait to return, we had found something deeper. Trust, forged in pain. Love, strong enough to withstand even our own fears. The poor girl who had known only loss and the powerful man who had feared vulnerability were at last truly home, in each other. The Mustang flew south through snow-dusted highways, Ethan driving with one hand on the wheel and the other clasped around mine, as though letting go might make me vanish again. Neither of us spoke much. Words felt too small for what had passed between us in those 3 weeks apart. Every mile closed the wound in my heart a little more, yet opened deeper knowledge of how fragile love could be when fear took the reins. We did not return to the San Diego compound. Ethan had already begun the shift he promised in his letters. Instead, he drove us to Big Sur, a breathtaking coastal estate he had quietly purchased years ago as a retreat, now prepared for us. Perched on cliffs above crashing waves, the house was all warm wood and glass, surrounded by redwoods and endless ocean. No gates, no guards visible, just peace. Inside, a fire crackled in the stone hearth. Soft blankets draped the furniture. A nursery waited upstairs, painted pale blue and cream, cradle ready. He had done all this while I was gone, pouring love into every detail. I stood in the doorway, tears falling silently. "It's beautiful." He came up behind me, arms encircling my rounded belly. "It's ours, safe, no shadows here." We spent the first days healing, long walks on empty beaches, hands intertwined. Quiet evenings by the fire, reading aloud to the baby. Passion returned slowly at first, gentle, reverent, then flared into the explosive fire we knew. He worshipped every new curve of my body, whispering apologies for the weeks lost, promises for every day ahead. I clung to him, the destitute girl who had once shivered through cold winds, now wrapped in warmth that reached my soul. Abuela joined us soon after, transported by private medical flight. The Big Sur air worked miracles. She grew stronger, sitting on the sun-drenched deck, knitting tiny blankets, smiling at Ethan with quiet approval. Ryan Decker's downfall came swiftly. Corruption charges, disgrace, removal from any position of power. Victor Morales sold his interests and vanished south of the border. Ethan quietly shifted more assets to legitimate luxury resorts and renewable trucking fleets. The old life receded like a tide. Our daughter was born on a crisp spring morning in 2026, in the bedroom overlooking the sea. Ethan held my hand through every moment, tears streaming down his face when her first cry filled the air. We named her Isabella, after my grandmother's mother. She had my dark hair and his fierce eyes. Years passed in a rhythm of fierce love and quiet redemption. 2 sons followed, strong, laughing boys, raised with ocean salt on their skin and stories of courage from their father's changed life. Ethan became the man he had always wanted to be, powerful still, but in ways that built rather than destroyed. He funded scholarships for children from struggling neighborhoods, built clinics in places where hope had been scarce. Every act carried the silent lesson that knowledge of past mistakes could guide better choices, that education of the heart as much as the mind could break cycles. I blossomed beside him. The thin, hollow-eyed girl who had once counted pennies for bread now ran a foundation helping women escape abuse and poverty. I spoke at events, sharing fragments of my story, always emphasizing that love crosses every divide, that wealth and poverty cannot separate true compassion, that skin color and circumstance mean nothing against the power of a heart that chooses kindness. We grew older together on that Big Sur cliff. Ethan's hair silvered at the temples, but his love burned undimmed, passionate, protective, deeper with every year. On quiet evenings, we sat on the deck, children's laughter echoing inside, his hand over mine. One night, watching the sunset paint the ocean gold, he said softly, "I was lost until you found me." I leaned into him, and I was broken until you showed me I was worth saving. Knowledge of pain had taught us gratitude. The lesson of hardship had become education in joy. Knowledge shaped our choices. The lesson of separation had deepened our bond. Education of life, of love, had made us whole. Love, we learned, was the truest power. It crossed every barrier, wealth, poverty, past mistakes. It healed what violence never could. If you've watched this far, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Please subscribe to the channel Alex Truths, give this video a like, and share it with someone who needs to hear that love and compassion always win. Tell me in the comments, how did this story touch you? Does it remind you of lessons from your own life or someone you know? Share your feelings. I read every comment and love hearing the emotions from deep within your hearts. I wish all of you watching good health, a joyful life, and daily peace. See you in the next video. Disclaimer: all stories on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.